Hello everyone, this is Tetrafolium, back for another one of these videos. My channel is growing a lot, as in, instead of getting like 5 views a video, now I'm getting like maybe 80. That's kind of cool. If you're here, like new to me, you've just heard about me, welcome, and thank you for being here. I'm trying to get myself a little bit more acquainted with the Gen 3 metagame, and I'm trying out some really crazy things that I didn't really think I would be trying at the start. And if you see the Pokemon on the right, you know I'm trying something kind of crazy. Now, not too crazy. Both of these Pokemon have some history, and we're going to go over that, but this is Raikou and Porygon2, ADV's Forgotten Partnership. Or maybe just the Forgotten Ship. I mean, I don't know, dude. They look kind of cute together. Sorry, that was a terrible joke to start a video on. In any case, let's look at the viability rankings. So, this is going to be kind of telling that I had to bust out the E rank to show off where one of the Pokemon I'm going to talk about is. But as of 2014, which was, in the grand scheme of things, a pretty long time ago, Raikou was considered a D rank Pokemon. So in the same vein as Pokemon like Breloom and Jinx, who at this time I don't believe either of them were OU ranked. And Raikou was basically considered the worst OU ranked Pokemon for a long time, until it fell out of OU. But again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. And there's Porygon2 over there. Hey, Porygon2. It's so weird to see you sandwiched between Venusaur and Ninjask. It's kind of... but alright. Let's talk about Raikou in relationship to some other Pokemon that you may be a little more familiar with in the tier. Zapdos, Jolteon, Magneton, the other OU ranked electric types. Comparing their stats here, Raikou actually compares somewhat favorably. It's the second fastest of the 4, and it's the third strongest. But granted, the second strongest is Magneton, so let's take it with a grain of salt. If you want to see what those stats look like, what it translates to, this is what we're looking at. Now, keep in mind that these exact stats are subject to change a little bit depending on which hidden power you choose. Magneton, for example, is not commonly going to hit, let's say with its modest set, 239, because if it runs HP Fire, that's going to lower it by 1 point, because of how hidden power and its IVs work. And a lot of these Pokemon were definitely going to have some small variance in their special attack stats, because they all very commonly like to run hidden power Grass. That's going to lower their special attack. There's no way around it. But as far as I can tell with this, Raikou, like I said, matches up pretty favorably. But look at the modest Raikou versus the timid Zapdos. Modest Raikou is both stronger and faster than a timid Zapdos. So we might think to ourselves I see a lot of timid Zapdos, but why would I use a timid Zapdos as my offensive electric type when I could just use modest Raikou, right? Well, we'll get to some of the problems that Raikou presents, ignoring the defensive utility of Zapdos completely here, but let's just go into a little brief history of Raikou. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I was around in the net battle era, or even the Smogon tours, early SPL, stuff like that. I was in 2011, I think I was still in elementary school, so obviously I was not playing on net battle back then. But in the early stages of Gen 3, 2004 to 2008 maybe, or while Generation 3 was the current gen, Raikou was actually considered one of the better Pokemon in the tier. It was commonly running a Calm Mind sweeping set. I imagine that it was probably seen kind of similarly to how we see Suicune today. Um, that's a little bit of speculation on my part, though, based on the light bit of reading that I did before preparing this. I don't know for sure, but I do know that TSS was not as popular in the early stages of Gen 3. But TSS became a lot more popular when we got into like the Smogon tours, SPL, Shoddy Battle becoming the like new like centralized area for people to be playing Pokemon on. And as TSS became more popular, you saw a shift in the metagame around sand immune Pokemon. Particularly, a lot more ground types became a lot more popular. So things like Swampert and Claydol are becoming like top tier defensive Pokemon, which is not favorable for Raikou for obvious reasons that we can't click our stab Thunderbolt, but also because it's gonna split our HP power or hidden power. Bleh, that is not as easy to say as you think it would be. Split your hidden power between grass to hit Swampert and ice to hit things like Flygon. As this metagame sort of develops into looking more like what our modern Gen 3 metagame looks like, Zapdos and Dugtrio grew like a lot in popularity. A part of the reason why Zapdos and Dugtrio maybe had some sparse usage or at least less popular. I don't think that they were like ever really like super sparse, but one of the reasons why they were not super common metagame threats in every sort of era of Gen 3 is due to differences in rule sets. So there were some people playing with rules where no legendaries were allowed, which would have also excluded Raikou, so that's kind of a moot point for the history of Raikou. But there are also some where trapping abilities were not allowed, so both Magneton and Dugtrio were banned. You couldn't use them. And in metagames where Dugtrio is not allowed, Raikou is a lot better. But we'll get into that a little bit shortly. And then, kind of as we go to the mid to late 2010s, Raikou fell a lot in usage. There were tournaments that would go by where Raikou was getting used like on the same sort of tier of usage as things like Registeel or Regirock or Kingdra, like things that we don't really see as super common things. And at that point, or at least it came to a head in the summer of 2019, they decided that Raikou did not meet the threshold to be considered an OU Pokemon anymore, so it fell to BL. This actually was the same move that brought Moltres up from BL to OU, so that's kind of interesting. Not so good for Raikou, and I think one of the big culprits here, I kind of already alluded to it, but is this guy, the evil Dugtrio. So, Dugtrio, why is it so evil? Well, Dugtrio's just a little bit faster than Raikou. So, as you can see here, if they're both a neutral nature, Dugtrio is just going to outspeed so long as it dumps its EVs into speed, which it is totally going to. Just for a little bit of reference, we can look at some of the EV investment that Dugtrio requires to outspeed Raikou. 216 EVs or 96 with a plus nature is going to get us faster than a modest Raikou, or 216 EVs with a plus speed nature, so Jolly, is going to be faster than a timid Raikou. Now you might think about it as like, well, okay, Dugtrio's a ground type, sure. That's not good for Raikou, and it's faster, but who cares? We'll just switch our Raikou out if it's got a bad matchup. Like, that's what we do with a lot of Pokemon, just switch them out. Well, here's the thing about Dugtrio, which again I've alluded to, but It has the ability Arena Trap, which prevents the opposing Pokemon from being able to switch out. So that means that Raikou is stuck to face the Dugtrio. Compared to two other Pokemon that commonly would get compared to Raikou, Zapdos is a flying type, and flying types are actually immune to the effects of Arena Trap. And Jolteon, while it is similarly a grounded electric type like Raikou, it is faster than Dugtrio. Now, as we'll see with Raikou, because it has a quite similar special attack stat to Jolteon, Jolteon does not even usually get the kill on a Dugtrio, but it has Baton Pass. And the notable thing about Baton Pass is it lets you switch even on an Arena Trap Dugtrio. So Jolteon can actually evade a Dugtrio trap. Raikou, even if it was fast enough, does not get Baton Pass. So it cannot help itself out there. So yeah, this is looking not so good for Raikou. But that's like, okay, well, maybe we could find a defensive set for Raikou so that it can live Dugtrio and still get a kill with a super effective hidden power, right? Well, let's take a look here. This is Raikou with a modest nature going for hidden power grass against Dugtrio. Hidden power ice is basically equivalent. I think you actually get 31 IVs, but it doesn't really change the role that significantly. You have a pretty decent chance to one-shot the Dugtrio with max special attack. Now granted, this is a no-investment Dugtrio. Dugtrio will commonly run some bulk to be able to live a Blissey Ice Beam, but it also pretty commonly will just do 252 attack, 252 speed. So it kind of goes both ways here. But let's see what Dugtrio is going to do. So Dugtrio, with not even with the plus attack nature and lowered IVs because of hidden power bug coverage, is guaranteed to KO a 252 HP Raikou. Uh-oh. Well, we can't have enough special attack to guarantee a kill on Dugtrio, even a low investment Dugtrio. And we can't even put the other 252 into HP or defense to live a Dugtrio. So the problem here is that Dugtrio is either going to OHKO Raikou, or we're going to have to run so much defensive investment that we don't even 2-hit KO the Dugtrio. Much less to think about the speed and how we're never, ever going to outspeed Dugtrio with that kind of spread. So what are we to do? It's a great question. How do we stop the Dugtrio? Well, the first thing that comes to mind probably is use a flying type, right? Dugtrio cannot trap a flying type like Skarmory, for example. So Skarmory could just come in and beat down the Dugtrio and win the 1v1. Well, even though Skarmory is a pretty good pick for this sort of concept because it's not weak to Rock Slide, which is a somewhat common coverage move that Dugtrio will run. The thing is, Dugtrio could just switch out, right? So it does not have to worry that badly about a flying type coming in and ruining its day. It could just go to some other Pokemon and then come back in later and still threatening to revenge kill our Raikou at any stage of the game. Okay, well, what if we counter trap it with a Dugtrio of our own? Well, that could work, but it's Dugtrio versus Dugtrio. That means that we are kind of rolling the dice here on which Dugtrio is going to win. Generally speaking, the faster Dugtrio wins, but it's also like really common to see max speed Dugtrios. So I don't know if I want to risk it on a speed tie, basically. So that's not quite good enough for us. So is there anything that we can do to beat Dugtrio? Well, this is where our second Pokemon comes in. Here's Porygon2. Kind of unassuming, right? It's a kind of goofy Pokemon. Late evolution to Porygon, who is another strange Pokemon in and of its own right. But the thing about Porygon2 is it has the ability Trace, which copies the opponent's ability. So what does that mean? That means that we have Arena Trap now, and Dugtrio is not immune to Arena Trap, as shown in the previous example with if we were going to use our own Dugtrio. So why do we care? Why do we want to trap Dugtrio with Porygon2 instead of another Dugtrio, right? Well, let's take a look at this roll here. This is an Adamant Choice Band Dugtrio, obviously with its HP bug coverage. Attacking into a not even quite fully max Fizdef Porygon2, it does not get a 2-hit KO. It's pretty nasty. Even if there was sand up, it would not get a 2-hit KO. So what does Porygon do back though? Oh, well, Porygon gets Ice Beam, and a no investment Porygon Ice Beam is threatening to OHKO the Dugtrio. I mean, it's not quite favored, but really the thing that matters is that Porygon2 is not getting 2-hit KO'd. What that means is Porygon2, with its recovery move, Recover, having 32 PP, any move that Dugtrio locks itself into, Earthquake being the strongest option that it will run, will not 2-hit KO our Porygon2. It's locked into using that move, so it can't switch its moves up. It can't switch out because of we've traced the Arena Trap. So the only thing that Dugtrio can do is just keep clicking, but Porygon can just keep healing. And that's why we care about getting to out of 2-hit KO range, because if Dugtrio crits, we don't want Dugtrio to kill us. So even with a crit doing double damage, Porygon's guaranteed to survive and can just recover again. So as long as it doesn't get crit twice in a row, or crit like in quick succession, right? Porygon is going to beat the Dugtrio. So our conclusion here is that Dugtrio's got to go get bent. Now let's look at matchup spread for Raikou. So Raikou is really good at taking on the electric weaks. I mean, duh. Like that's not a surprise. So the flying types like Moltres, Charizard, Skarmory, they're all in trouble. The water types, they're in trouble. Smeargle's in trouble just because anything that outspeeds Smeargle is giving it problems. Now, granted, Raikou's not guaranteed to kill Smeargle, but the nastiest thing that Smeargle can do, which is Spore, Raikou commonly runs Substitute, and subbing on a Spore on a Smeargle, basically, like, you just won the game there. Now, these next 4 Pokemon, Breloom, Flygon, Salamence, and Swampert, it depends on what hidden power we have. If we have Ice, we're a lot better into the first 3. If we have Grass, we're a lot better into Swampert. So, yeah. Granted, I would say it's usually easier to fit Ice coverage somewhere else on your team because a lot of Pokemon get Ice Beam. So that's why you maybe would want to consider having HP Grass to hit Swampert, despite the fact that there are arguably 3 Pokemon that you're better against when you have HP Ice. Although that being said, if you've watched my Flygon video, you know that HP Ice Raikou might still not be enough. But if you want to know more about that, go watch my Flygon video. The next set of Pokemon, it's set dependent or a trade. So something like Aerodactyl cannot switch into a T-Bolt, and if Raikou has a sub up, similarly it's just going to beat the stuffing out of Aerodactyl. However, Aerodactyl is easily getting a kill with Earthquake. I don't even think it has to be choice banded to get it. Maybe, I don't know. I'll do a little. I'll do a quick calculation here. Oh, in fact, no. If it's not banded, the Aerodactyl does not get the kill, which is pretty nice. It is pretty much guaranteed if 3 layers of spikes are up, but I mean, like that's asking a lot. Celebi, I know Raikou has hidden power ice and also potentially crunch to hit Celebi for super effective, but if you look at the calc, it does not do enough for me to confidently say that with the right coverage you can beat Celebi. Now, it's not wash necessarily for Celebi though, because Raikou behind a sub is not afraid of Leech Seed, and if it Calm Minds itself out of a sub going down range, then it doesn't really matter whether the Raikou has moves to hit the Celebi or not, because it can boost up to 10 million, and then Thunderbolt is going to get a 2-hit KO. A lot of these other Pokemon, it's either Raikou's doesn't have a move that hits them very well, and they hit Raikou back very well. So, like, for example, Medicham. Raikou can sometimes 2-hit KO the Medicham, depends on how much investment into its special defense the Medicham is running. But Medicham is going to hit back really hard with a break. So while the Raikou might win one-on-one, it's not like a slam dunk. The Pokemon that Raikou really struggles with are below. Claydol has too much special defense and a super effective Earthquake. So even if you have Crunch or Hidden Power Grass or Hidden Power Ice, you're not usually going to get through the Claydol. Tyranitar with minimum bulk is going to live 2 Thunderbolts, and with a pretty normal amount of attack investment, which would be like 252 attack, it's threatening to KO with Earthquake. Metagross might get 2-hit KO'd, but it is always threatening a KO back on you with Earthquake. So, yeah, it depends on the Metagross set a little bit, but usually Metagross is just going to beat the Raikou. Jirachi, if it's Wish with defensive investment, it can take Raikou on decently well. If it's Calm Mind, it can match boosts, and I think that I'm of the opinion that Jirachi in a Calm Mind war is favored against every other Calm Minder, unless that Calm Minder has Roar, which Raikou could run. We could talk a little bit about that when we talk about the sets that Raikou might run. But Jirachi, I think, is just slightly better against Raikou, kind of regardless of what set it's running. And then, the normals, Blissey and Snorlax and Dugtrio are just infamously tough for Raikou to break through. Not impossible. If the Blissey is passive enough, Raikou can get through it, but it's usually just not going to get there. So, and as you know, with these matchup spreads, I'm always biased for the Pokemon that I like here. Like Starmie could outspeed / speed tie and get massive damage off on the Raikou. So it's not like Raikou just immediately beats Starmie. So, take some of that with a grain of salt there. So the standard Raikou set is the Calm Mind Sweeper idea. This is pretty much the bread and butter. This is almost every Raikou set is going to look something similar to this with Calm Mind Thunderbolt. The advantages of this, we speed tie Starmie, right, because we have the same base speed. We're going to be faster than every Gengar, which is really nice. You're faster than an Adamant +1 Tyranitar, meaning that if the Tyranitar uses Dragon Dance, will still be faster than it if it's Adamant. We're actually faster than a max speed +1 Swampert. You might be saying, how does Swampert get to +1? Well, look up the Endeavor Swampert set that runs Salak Berry. I guess Swampert could run Salakberry if it's not running Endeavor, but usually it's most common with the end pert set. If Aerodactyl or Jolteon decides that they want to run a plus attack or a plus special attack boosting nature instead for some reason, we will outspeed them as well. They only hit 359 and we hit 361. So that's pretty good. And then we're going to be faster than Adamant Dugtrio as well. We're not favored to kill an Adamant Dugtrio, even if it has no HP investment, but there's a chance that we do, and if we have spikes down, that could maybe help us out as well. So Raikou, not completely screwed against every single Dugtrio. There are certain situations where Raikou can win, but it needs a lot of support to get there. So some niche Raikou sets. Rest Calm Mind. I don't think that this is like really a set anymore, but there is a Smogon right up on it. I guess you could read more about it there, but I generally I don't think that this is a great set. I've never personally seen it either. Vapakuno, who's a prominent ADV player, possibly plays other tiers. I'm not so sure. I'm pretty hyper focused on ADV right now, so you have to forgive me if I don't recognize Vapakuno, the great Gen 5 OU player, if that is the case. So forgive me for that. But this Raikou set is kind of interesting. It's Calm Mind with no substitute, and it's using Crunch to get some extra coverage. Crunch in conjunction with Thunderbolt and HP Grass is kind of nice because it gives you a move to hit Celebi and Claydol. In fact, Crunch is even better than HP Grass, or sorry, HP Ice would be, so that's kind of nice. You're still not great into a lot of the matchups that you're still not great into, like Snorlax, Blissey, a plus speed nature Dugtrio, but at the very least, you're helping yourself out so that your sweep is not so easily stopped. And then Lumberry is kind of a niche item for Raikou. Raikou does not want to get statused. That's going to stop its sweep pretty much on the spot because commonly it's going to want to spend a lot of turns calm minding and substituting. So it wants leftovers to maintain its HP. So Burn or Toxic really cuts into Raikou's time to sweep. And Thunderwave Paralysis, I mean, it's just over for Raikou if that happens. You might as well sack it at that point. It's really bad. But now let's look at Porygon2. So this is the standard Porygon2 set, which, as you can imagine, is going to run a lot of HP and defense so that they can guarantee survive the Dugtrio. The nice thing about Porygon is that it's running Bolt Beam coverage, meaning Thunderbolt plus Ice Beam. You could run Thunder as well if you want to. I have seen that before, and it is really nice when the Thunders hit, and it's really not so nice when the Thunders don't hit, as you could probably imagine. But Ice Beam is enough to OHKO an offensive Salamence or an offensive Flygon. Against the standard defensive Flygon, you have a 50-50 roll to OHKO it. Against my particular Flygon set, it's Flygon is favored to live, although Flygon is not generally the best thing to take on Porygon2. You could think about this Porygon set as being like a slightly more physically defensive Blissey. That's a lot higher praise of Porygon2 than it probably deserves because it is not very good at taking on the special attacks. And it is also not as resilient against the status because it doesn't have an ability that gets rid of its status on switch out. Although, as we'll see in the sets, Porygon2 does have some ways to play around status depending on what your opponent has on their team. We will get into that in a moment, though. I guess I have a novel set idea for every video, so I'm going to give you one for Raikou here. Admittedly, I don't think that this is very good, but there's a little niche to it, I guess. So we're going to be modest, which allows us to still outspeed all the base 100s. And we're running 76 special defense. So that means that we can guarantee to keep a sub up versus timid non-magnet Magneton. How common is that? It's not really that common, but there are some Magneton sets that run Endure with Salakberry with HP Grass, commonly are timid, so that they can threaten to beat a Dugtrio that traps them. If that happens to be the set you're up against, then this Raikou just sets up like to plus 10 million on it. It's really nice, actually, in theory, because I've never actually tried this set. If you're wondering, a modest non-magnet Magneton is favored to break the sub, and a modest magnet Magneton always breaks the sub. So that's part of the reason why I don't think that this amount of SPDEF investment is really that worth it. Additionally, the amount of power that we lose, we don't even quite KO the Metagross. He's getting Little Root Town again. My loop is not good, but in any case, we're almost done. So these are the actual tweaks that I made to make the particular team that has these two on it. Raikou is very simple. Instead of a timid nature, I'm running modest. So we can talk about some of the things that Raikou does not outspeed if it's not running max speed. Like, for example, Electabuzz. Okay, no, let's be serious. There are some things like Gengar. We lose the speed tie to Starmie. We are slower than many of the DD Tyrannitars after they get to +1. And we're going to be slower than Adamant Dugtrio, so we don't even get to punish it for being so greedy. In any case, I still think that there is room for modest. I mean, think about it as stronger, slightly faster, timid Zapdos. And that's kind of what we're going with here. And we have Calm Mind too, which if Zapdos got Calm Mind, low-key might get banned from the tier. But it doesn't, so we don't have to worry about that. But Raikou does, so let's worry about that. And then the Porygon, it's looking very similar to the standard Porygon. I actually cut 4 EVs from defense. I don't know why the standard Porygon goes to 200. You only need 196 to live the Dugtrio, or the Adamant Banded Dugtrio Earthquake crit. That's a lot. That's a word salad. So yeah, I don't know why. Technically, you could even cut another 4 EVs off of this. But you will die to a max roll crit from Adamant Dugtrio if it's not running HP Bug for some reason. I don't know how common Adamant Dugtrio with no HP Bug is. It sounds like it would be really, really bad into Celebi. But, I mean, it's possible, maybe, that somebody says, I don't want my Dugtrio to trap Celebi. I just want to have Rock Slide and Sunny Day or whatever on it. So let's take it out of the hands of fate and just make sure that we're guaranteed to live it. And then instead of putting the rest of the EVs into special defense, I put it into special attack to help us out against Flygon a little bit. We're I think over 80% likely to KO the standard defensive Flygon, and I think we're even favored to kill by crazy Flygon set. So that's quite nice. On to the team. So this is like a mixed offense structure. If you couldn't tell, I do like mixed offense in this tier. That's why the Metachan team that I built, we'll use quotes around I built. I mean, a lot of my teams start as a sample team and then I make changes to them. Like this one, for example, I started with a different Porygon Raikou team, and then I put Starmie on it. I switched around the Salamence set. I switched around the Metagross set. Like, it's not super duper recognizable from the team I started with, but like that's how I go about team building, by the way, if you wanted a little bit of a insight into how I go about it. But we've got our physical banded Salamence and agility Metagross. Then we have a Leech 3 attack Celebi and an offensive Starmie with max speed. So the thing is, Celebi, Metagross, and Starmie do invite the Dugtrio revenge kill, and the idea is that Dugtrio will probably come in to finish off one of them when they're low, and then Porygon2 can come in and accept the exchange, if you want to use chess terms, but essentially to revenge kill the revenge killer. One thing to note is that I have a max speed Starmie here, and that gives me the speed control that allows me to run a modest Raikou for this team. If I was not running max speed Starmie, like if I was running defensive Starmie, or if I was running a different rapid spinner like Claydol, then I would probably have to run a max speed Raikou, because otherwise offensive Gengar is just too strong into this team. And we'll see a little bit in the replays where this team kind of struggles a bit against Gengar, but it still has room to play around it, so that's fine. All right, little root town, you're done. Let's go ahead and get to our replays here. So I hope this video doesn't go too long, but I'm going to show I think 5 replays this time. I figure it's worth it because we have 2 Pokemon that we're covering kind of with this video. So let's start here. So lead Celebi versus lead Mence. Mence loves that. It's possible that the Celebi could be max speed with HP Ice, but I don't know if you would want to risk that necessarily at the start of the game. I'll go to my own Celebi, which is just really good into Swampert, especially when it's at full health. This Celebi's actually lead with Light Screen. I guess that makes sense. You would want to get your screen up early. I'm just going to throw out some HP Fires here. Wait out the Light Screen. Go to Metagross on the Aerodactyl. In this team paste, I don't know if I'm gonna have leftovers or Lumberry on the Metagross. I was going back and forth on which one I thought was better. You can certainly do either one. Sometimes the leftovers is really nice, and sometimes you wish you had the Lumberry. So that's kind of just how it goes. But we're gonna go back to Celebi on the Swampert, and now I opt to go to Raikou. Predicting the Swampert to do something that would not threaten my Raikou. But instead we get Tar. I switch out and it goes for Pursuit. I'm not that scared of Pursuit Tar, especially with my Salamence. I have a banded Brick Break, and you would be surprised how many people stay in with their Tyranitar against Salamence. And like, I understand that bulky T-Tar lives Brick Break from non-banded Mence, but like, didn't you see me take damage and not recover? Like, you're not gonna scout for the choice band. I also hit a hidden power on something. You could have calced that. Never mind though. It's whatever. I switched my Aerodactyl into Earthquake, which is not nice. But I do have a free back to Salamence. And I opt to go to Celebi, predicting Swampert to want to come in, but I get Skarmory instead. So I just go for HP Fire to get some damage there. I do catch the Celebi, which is really nice. And I go for Hidden Power again. If I crit, I kill. Not going to fish for the second crit here. Instead, I'm going to get Raikou in. And this Celebi has not shown anything that threatening. It might have 0 attacks for all I know. So I sub on the Leech Seed, which is very good, and then I Calm Mind, and a presumably HP Grass does not break my sub. So now I can start Calm Minding to 10 million. It stalls the light screen turns as well, which is really nice. So I'll just sub again. Goes for a Leech Seed, which was very foolish. It allows me to get my T-Bolt off. Hidden Power is not going to kill. At the very least, if this Celebi went for HP Grass instead of Leech Seed before, it would have broke the sub, and then Aerodactyl could have came in. But basically, one mistake is going to convert into a Raikou sweeping the team here. Because I have HP Grass to take out the Swampert. Magneton's going to come in. It dies to Thunderbolt. Aerodactyl will come in, break the sub, but it's going to die to Thunderbolt. And then Skarmory has no chance to live this either, so we just get a forfeit there. You can ignore my elo as low as it was. It took me a long time to figure out how to work this team. Let's just say that. But in any case, here's the second replay. We didn't get to see, I don't even think Porygon came out in the last game, so perhaps we'll see what happens when the Porygon gets involved. So lead T-Tar, I always break the lead T-Tar, and I get the kill here. Again, you'd be shocked how many people are willing to risk the whole T-Tar for this. And we see a substitute from Swampert. To me, that's red flags that it might be Endeavor Pert, but we see leftovers, so it's not likely to be Endeavor Pert with leftovers. But in any case, he gets the freeze right away, which is really not nice. Decides to actually switch to Metagross, though, as I go to Starmie. I'll just pump Metagross Agilities. Presumably it's Lumberry, and then just blows up on my Starmie, which is fine. It's not the greatest thing, because a Metagross that's willing to blow up on the Starmie usually means that the Starmie would have been really good into the team otherwise. But he has a whole Snorlax, so I'm not really too miffed about losing the Starmie. I get parried and then Earthquake. If I get parried by the Lax, I'm almost always going to go for Explosion if I don't have Lumberry. Because Paralyzed Metagross is not great. But here we see Porygon2 come in to take over 50% from the Salamence. I decide I'm going to switch back. This is likely a Banded Mence. Likely a slower Banded Mence, though. So I'll go for Rock Slide. I get a nice crit on the Magneton. And then here's kind of where Porygon2 is going to be clutch here. So I go to Celebi to absorb the status, which I presumed was happening. And I'm going to go to Porygon2 to Magnet Pull trap the Magneton. Now, my Porygon2 is too low to actually do anything, but it forces the Magneton to kill my Porygon, which means I can get into Raikou and I substitute. This Magneton goes for Thunder Wave. And then I'm going to Calm Mind, and then Raikou wins the game here. Now, it's arguable how much the Porygon2 actually mattered in that exchange. If the opponent just went for T-Bolt instead of trying to Thunder Wave, they would have just broke my sub, and then I would have been forced to T-Bolt and get the kill. I wouldn't have had a sub and a +1 up to beat this Salamence. But this is a thing. It's like Raikou is not a common enough Pokemon that people know the calcs off the top of their head, right? So I think my opponent just assumed that Magneton was not going to break a sub, or didn't even realize that Raikou runs sub. I don't know. So trying to go for a Thunder Wave there. I guess there's an argument that it's kind of a 50-50, because if he T-Bolts and I go for Calm Mind, then the next T-Bolt is not going to break my sub. So they're kind of a 50-50 there, but I think, I mean, if you're ever in this situation, just T-Bolt with the Magneton. That's my recommendation to you. So maybe we'll see what happens if a Dugtrio is involved. I can't remember if there's a Dugtrio in this game. My opponent, they won't trap me. Guess he's an anti-Dugtrio guy. I assume I keep saying guy. I don't like. I'm not trying to assume people's genders necessarily. It's just force of habit, I guess. I'll go to Porygon2 on the Salamence to check it out. Note, in this generation, if you trace Intimidate, the Intimidate doesn't go off. So I'm not going to Porygon2 because I think I'm going to Intimidate the Salamence. I'm going to Porygon2 because if I have to sack something to Banded Salamence, I'd rather it be my Porygon2. So this is a Curselax who's going to wisely pivot to Gengar on my Banded Brick Break. This is where I come in with my Porygon, and Porygon is really nice into Salamence here because I can just fire off an Ice Beam. But instead I go for T-Wave. It's still good into Salamence, and he hasn't shown a ground type yet. So I'm satisfied to get Paralysis on the Snorlax. Helps me out with my Metagross here. So at this point, Metagross could die to a Boom if it's Curse Boom, but I don't want to go for Explosion because if my opponent goes to Gengar, that could be bad. But my opponent actually goes to Suicune, which arguably is a crazy play. But this is a low special attack investment Suicune. I can tell based on how little the Ice Beam is doing to Celebi. I get a nice Leech Seed off on Calm Mind turn. So now I could go to Starmie, who walls pretty effectively. They go to Snorlax, but I'm going to spin the Spike away. I eat a Shadow Ball for my troubles. But since there's no Sand up, I can continually get my HP back with leftovers. So my opponent is going to go to Gengar, and I pivot to Raikou here. So they're going to reveal their last speed, Claydol. Porygon2 is pretty nice into Claydol because it traces via Levitate and therefore is immune to Earthquake. And it's not like Psychic is that strong on Claydol. And if Claydol booms on Porygon2, I mean, I'm very happy about that. So here I go for an HP Flying, trying to catch the Gengar coming in, but I instead get the Salamence, which is fine. Salamence will Dragon Dance. I'm going to Ice Beam. I could have maybe T-Wave there, but it's kind of whatever. I do get a T-Wave off on the Suicune anyway. Ice Beam, Calm Mind, Toxic usually can't run. You cannot fit Rest on that, and it reveals to not be. It's got Surf, obviously. So I'm going for T-Bolt to threaten big damage. I get a little bit of chip on Snorlax. Snorlax Shadow Balls. I'm starting to think that the Snorlax might not have Earthquake. So I'll just Meteor Mash. Earthquake there. We're going to win 1v1 here. I go for a Mash there because I know that Mash plus Quake is threatening to kill, and anything that switches into Mash is like getting hurt. And I have enough speed on my Metagross to outspeed the common Claydol set, which, I mean, that makes sense because I'm Agility Metagross. I go for T-Wave on the Smeargle, but catch the Snorlax. Just go to Mence here. And then Smeargle's back in. Smeargle is not going to take any move from Mence, really, so I just go for HP Flying, and I kill the Suicune off. Porygon2 coming back in here. Now that this is +1 and I'm lower, I might die. But my opponent greedily goes for another DD, and I just Ice Beam and kill it. And there you go, Porygon2, showing its worth there. It's possible that this Mence did not have something that could have killed the Porygon. It would need Brick Break, and DD Mence is not very commonly running Brick Break. So yeah, I don't know. This even if my opponent switched to Snorlax or something like that, this was gearing up to an end game where Raikou was going to come in clutch and just T-Bolt on everything. As soon as the Snorlax goes down, nothing wants to take a T-Bolt. Starmie was in a similar spot where it can just click its moves into everything. I hit a pump on Gengar and it's over. So yeah, I think I played this one pretty well. And the Porygon2, despite the fact there's no Dugtrio, Porygon2 is still clutch. But we need to see a Dugtrio matchup here. So, and I think this is the one here. Lead Metagross, a lot of times is choice banned. Based on that damage, I think it is. I'm gonna go for a Meteor Mash of my own because I don't expect the Metagross to stay in. I miss on the Celebi, which sucks, but I do call the Leech Seed, and I get a HP Fire off on what seems to be a bulky Celebi. Just go for another HP Fire. It's good damage. This Zapdos does not have an item, which was alarm bells were. This is a banded Zapdos with Drill Peck. But I just T-Bolt into Snorlax. Snorlax is going to curse. A lot of curse lax on the ladder all of a sudden. I don't know what's up with that. And this time I just boom. I haven't seen a Spiker revealed, and I haven't seen... Metagross is not sufficient as the only rock resist on the team. So I figured that there was going to be a rock resist like Swampert. And if there was no Spiker as the last one, I didn't think that there would be a Gengar on this team, so I was fine to go for the explosion with my Metagross there. It's certainly possible Gengar could just be on any team, but based on the structure, I kind of thought that it wasn't going to be the case, so I was free to explode. If I got bit there, then it is what it is. But Starmie to Celebi on the Swampert is pretty nice. I go for Giga Drain, just get a little bit of HP back on the Zapdos. I'll go to Porygon2 here, not because I think it's a good Zapdos check, but I don't want to take damage on anything else. So I go for a T-Wave, which is really nice, caught the Metagross. If he went to Swampert, I would have been in a little bit of trouble. But the Metagross is actually going to boom on my Porygon. And, this reminds me of the niche that Baby Porygon had in RBY, where it would come in on the Snorlax and threaten to PP stall it out. And the only thing that Snorlax could do was self-destruct. But if you self-destruct on the Porygon, then you are, that's chef's kiss. The rest of this game is just playing out here. It's gearing up for Celebi to kind of sweep through the team. Yeah, it seems like this is maybe also a Leech 3 attacks, but not with as much attack investment or speed investment for some reason. Swampert will come in. I mean, come on. And then last mon Suicune. So I get my Leech Seed off on the Suicune, which is really nice for me. And I Giga Drain. I'm running out of Giga Drains here. But I think I have 2 more left. And this is a substitute Suicune. I'm going to go to Mence here. The Suicune rests. Sub-rest is not at all common. So it's kind of crazy. But knowing that, I know that I can go to Raikou here and abuse these sleep turns. I'll get my own sub up. And we kind of have our own sub-seed going here with Raikou. Which is really nice. So I'll just Calm Mind War with this. this is fine because I'm just getting health back from the Leech Seed, and my opponent is going to have to rest again at some point, which is going to give me more free turns. Like, this is a foregone conclusion. Shoutouts to my opponent for playing it out, but let's go on fast here so that we're not here all day. Yeah, at this stage, T-Bolt doing a lot. I get a para there, not like it really matters. And yeah, that just ends the game there. There we go. I cannot recall, actually. I'm sure that I have got a Dugtrio game somewhere. But we have not rolled up to it. So this is against a guy named Boring Stall Main, player named Boring Stall Main. I should probably get in the habit of saying that instead. So as you can imagine, we're going to be up against Stall, and ADV Stall looks quite a bit different than what modern Stall looks like. But I'm here to show that Raikou maybe is good against Stall. I don't know. So I boom on that Milo. Milo is a pretty difficult Pokemon to handle. Now I do have a whole Raikou to handle it, but I was not willing to let the glue pieces go here. So I just boomed. If he went to Registeel, or this player went to Registeel, I would have probably been in a bad situation, but thankfully that was not the case. So I'm making, when Celebi's in, I'm making a lot of plays in case this Dugtrio decides to come in. So you'll see, not against this Blissey. I go for the Leech Seed there because it's just too valuable. But you'll see a lot of cases I will go for like a Psychic or a Giga Drain, even if it doesn't make a lot of sense, because I want to be able to hit the Dugtrio. If I Giga Drain it, it's dead. If I Psychic it, it might be dead. I don't actually think so, but Dropek Skarmory, not great for my Celebi. I will go for the Hidden Power to get the damage off, and I actually survive on a nice roll there. Now I'm threatening a kill with HP Fire, but I read a switch to Blissey there. I got my Leech Seed off. I figured that if the Skarmory Drill-Pecked, then that's a turn that it's not getting spikes up, and it's so low that I'm like totally fine to go to Starmie and undo its progress. I go for some Leech Seeds here. I'm making the right plays, but I'm not getting the profit there. My opponent is playing pretty safe around this, not going to Dugtrio on my Celebi at any time. I decide to spin the Spike away against the Blissey, which, you know, that costs my whole Starmie. But I want to get some progress going. I go to Raikou, sub, and get some damage on the Claydol. Now I can go to Porygon2, who will take this Earthquake quite well. And then I think I pivot here. Oh no, I don't. I actually get a Thunder Wave off on the Registeel, which is quite nice. It might be a rest Registeel, so this might not be lasting progress, but if it's not, that's a para that's going to stay the whole game, which is really nice. Calm Mind Blissey cannot fit Aromatherapy, so it's quite good. I go to a Raikou here just to chip heal, and then I'm back to Celebi. Blissey's in. I go for HP Fire just to get some damage on the Registeel. At this point, I'm not playing super carefully around the Dugtrio coming in. I think my opponent thinks that going to Dugtrio to get rid of my Celebi is not worth it. Which, I mean, maybe that's fair. I don't know. I'm getting nice chip on the Registeel, though. I can get a Leech Seed here. That was, I think, a pretty obvious Leech Seed turn there. And then I can go to Raikou here, who's going to threaten a kill on Skarmory, so obviously Skarm cannot stay in. Claydol will come. I would have probably went to Blissey myself against Raikou, but then that kind of risks the Calm Mind War, and I guess my opponent did not want to go for that. At this point, I'm 2 at KOing with HP Grass, so I'm going to stay in, and I take the Earthquake and live it, which is quite nice. Then I'm going to double to Mence, predicting a switch to Blissey or Registeel. Unfortunately, my opponent just stays in with the Claydol. I guess that makes sense because they would have revenge killed with the Dugtrio. So kind of still astute for me to not get the kill on the Claydol there. We're just going to play a slow game here. I'm kind of running low on Leech Seeds. I only have 4 left. But now I can go to Porygon2. Porygon2 is quite nice against Blissey because Blissey commonly runs a status move, and if not, then it has Ice Beam and Thunderbolt, which could both status, and if I trace the Natural Cure, then I kind of have status immunity a little bit. But since this Claydol is so low, I can afford to Brick Break. It's good. Now I can go to Porygon against the Dugtrio. The Dugtrio goes for Rock Slide, and that's not even close to killing my Porygon here. So I get flinched. That's okay as long as I don't get crit and flinched again. But now I'm going to recover. And this is what Porygon does to Dugtrio. If you find yourself Porygon in on Dugtrio, you can just recover until this Dugtrio runs out of moves. And that's literally what I'm going to do. So let's go to Hyper Fast for just a moment here until this Dugtrio is out of Rock Slides. I still have plenty of recovers. A crit doesn't matter. Flinch doesn't really matter. And now it's out of moves, so it's going to struggle. I'm going to recover just to get back to full health here. And then I can Ice Beam. And now Dugtrio's dead. I'll get a little bit of HP back there. And then I can go to Celebi, who still has a few Leech Seeds here. So I can Leech Seed the Bliss, which is going to force a switch at some point. I was actually willing to let the Celebi die there, because with a Leech Seed, Raikou is 1v1ing the Blissey. Now I can Leech Seed again. My opponent goes for Ice Beam, and they get the crit and kill my Celebi. I'll go to Salamence here because Banded Mence Brick Break is going to kill. But I read that my opponent's not going to let the Blissey die, so I actually go for HP Flying to kill off the Claydol. And now it's just as simple as basically sacking Porygon here. I actually decide I'm not trying to get frozen for a bunch of turns and let the Blissey get a bunch of Calm Minds going. So I go to Raikou here, basically trying to get some damage just to keep it low enough for Brick Break to kill. So I bait the Blissey to killing my Raikou. My opponent should have just kept soft boiling, but I guess this is kind of a hard play to make in that situation. And then, yeah, Last Mon Skarmory is not going to do it against the Mence, and the Porygon2. So my opponent will forfeit there. And yeah, there you go. That was like the ideal Porygon2 trap to lay the groundwork for the rest of the team to go. I mean, it was more helpful to the Celebi than it was to the Raikou because this team also had Blissey. But needless to say, like, Porygon2 can be an enabler for Raikou's teammates just as well as it could be an enabler for Raikou. And that's pretty cool. Now, I mean, I will say this team, as you can see, I was bouncing around in ELO. I did manage to get myself back to like the 1600s using this team. So it's not bad. It's not very easy to use, I'll say that, and its problems. It has some problems against, in particular, things like fortress teams can be a little bit of a problem. I don't have fire coverage except on Celebi, and if fortress catches the Celebi with an HP bug, um, like then things go really south. So that's kind of a weird Pokemon to have a weakness to, but nevertheless, Fortress is a little bit of a problem. Um, there's like Gengar again can be a problem. Uh, I kind of rely on hitting a Hydro Pump against Gengar. If I don't hit the Hydro Pump with my Starmie, then the game's basically over at that stage. Raikou can certainly 1v1 a Gengar, but if the Gengar blows up my Raikou, or if um, like I get statused on the Raikou, then like Gengar's gonna win the game basically by itself. Um, and yeah, there are other like weird things that can give this team trouble, but I think it's got the tools to play around and win. Um, Sometimes I wish the Raikou was a Zapdos, and sometimes I wish the Porygon was a Blissey. But you know, we we gotta have some spice in our life. So this is a reason for Raikou and a reason for Porygon. But I hope that this is kind of elucidated that Raikou can still be threatening. Maybe it's not the most consistent threat, but it can still be threatening, and Porygon 2 is a nice partner for it. So that's the takeaway here. So thank you for watching if you've watched all this way. I know that I yap for a long time, but I really do appreciate it if you're here. And if you've made it this far, I mean, might as well like and subscribe, right? Um, anyway, I hope to do another one of these videos soon, and I'll see you there.